This episode is brought to you by Audi. The road is calling. Embrace the thrill of the drive with the all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. Featuring effortless power, serious acceleration, and advanced Audi tech. It's not just a new EV. It's a new way to experience driving. The all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron is here. The next chapter of Audi starts now.
Here at the Almond Joy Factory, where tropical vibes abound, we use soft, fresh-tasting coconut.
The crunchiest almonds and delicious chocolate candy.
Ah, but do you know what our most important ingredient is? Sometimes you feel like a nut.
Sometimes you don't.
Almond Joy's got nuts and something even way better than that. Yes, Almond Joy is made with almonds and joy.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
You're listening to the Animation Addicts Podcast, episode 322, Moana 2. I am Moana Sue. Welcome to the Animation Addicts Podcast with the Rotoscopers, the #1 place to get your animation fix with animation addicts just like you. Each episode, we dive into the wonderful world of animation featuring Disney, DreamWorks, Pixar, and everything in between. From hilarious discussions and movie reviews to interviews with industry insiders, this show's mission is to brighten your day through our love of animation. So hop on your nerdy couch, grab some snacks, and get ready to hang out with your animation besties because it's time to dive into today's episode.
Hey there, Animation Addicts. I'm Morgan Stradling.
And I'm Chelsea Robson.
We are joined today by an amazing, lovely co-host, Rachel Wagner. Say hello.
Hey.
Rachel has been a longtime contributor to the site, and now she has, for years, she's had her own site focused on Hallmark movies. So, Rachel, it's been a while since we had you on the podcast. Tell people who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I am a film critic and podcaster, and you can find my work at Rachel's Reviews, where I do talk about animation quite a bit over there, and we have monthly Talking Disney Classics episodes with my friend Stanford, where we read the entire canon and more, and then I also have the Hallmarkies podcast, which is very busy this time of year with everything Hallmark, rom-com, and holiday, so it's a lot of fun.
I've been hearing a lot about Hot Santa. Or no, hot Frosty. Oh my!
Yeah, it is pretty fun.
They've got some pretty risque ones out this year. I've noticed. So
I mean that's Netflix, so Netflix is a little edgier than Hallmark, but yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's oddly enough, there's a long line of snowmen turned come to life movies. Yeah. There's like a bunch.
I mean, we're all just wishing to make our own man. I get it.
But Hot Frosty is pretty good.
Okay, so you heard it here first. Go and check it out. So we are not going to be talking about Hot Frosty. Sorry, guys. I know we got you excited, but we are going to be talking about Disney's latest animated feature under the Walt Disney Animation Studios banner, Moana 2.
Imagine what's possible when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadlines so you can learn at a time and pace that works for you. It's an education you can tailor to your schedule. That means you don't have to put your life on hold to pursue your professional goals. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does, without me lifting a finger. So I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
Uh-oh. The last cookie.
You can get a new box of cookies in as fast as an hour with Walmart Express Delivery.
Are you my guilty self-conscience?
No, I'm the voice offering you promo code EXPRESS for free delivery on your first order.
Hey, who ate my cookies?
You mean, these cookies?
Order now. Welcome to your Walmart. Promotion valid for first express delivery order. $50 minimum subject to availability. Restrictions apply.
All right, so we initially were going to do Spellbound before we did Moana 2. I know some of you are like, your schedule is never exactly what you say it is. You say you're going to do one thing, and the next episode, it totally changes. Yes, it does. So Spellbound will be our next episode, and Moana 2 is going to be right now because it is the hot thing that everyone's talking about. So before we do, let's set the stage about this movie. We have talked at length about the interesting history and very short history of this movie and how it came to be. We'll preface you on that in a second. But first, let's talk about the production studio and some basic information. So obviously, it's Walt Disney Animation Studios. The director is David Derrick Jr., Jason Hand, Dana Ledoux Miller. I've also heard that Jared Bush is a secret, covert fourth director on this. Screenplay is done by Jared Bush and Dana Ledoux Miller. Story by Jared Bush, Dana Ledoux Miller, and Beck Smith. And it was released November 27th, 2024. So the big Thanksgiving winter release for Disney. Budget $150 million. And so far, it's only been a few days that it's been out. This is your typical 5-day release. And as of Friday, it's only been out through, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, with maybe a few previews on Tuesday, $109.6 million. It's expected to make, I think, somewhere $175 million over the 5-day, which is great for Disney, but really terrible because this movie is really terrible.
I wouldn't go straight to really terrible, but I mean, maybe just take away the really. But yeah,
I mean, we're basically normalizing that going the Return of Jafar route is okay for Disney.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is to be expected.
Not great.
So before we get into talking about our specific thoughts of this movie, we have a whole episode talking about Moana 2 when it was announced. And this was just a few months ago, less than a year ago. In the spring, they announced Moana 2. Initially, this was a Disney Plus TV series that they were doing. So obviously, it was probably going to have 8 to 10 episodes. Moana was going to go on an adventure and, do all these side quests along the way. Obviously, this was one where it had an overarching arc that it clearly was going to be leading to. It wasn't just a very episodic show, but Disney Plus being Disney Plus and being a total money pit for Disney, Iger decided, no, we got to show for once in its life, Disney Plus is profitable. So he's doing all sorts of cuts and accounting gimmicks to really prove, quotes around the word prove, to investors that Disney Plus is profitable. One of those things that he decided was, let's take Moana 2 off of the Disney Plus books and turn it into a theatrical production. And so that's one of the trickeries that they were able to do there. Since it was already in production, they were moving along. But also they had a film about a Persian princess that was, I've heard from insiders that it was just going terribly. They gave her so much rope with this, and they really were trying to make it work. And finally, it needed to go into production, and it was not ready. It was never going to go into production. And so they cut that. They needed something. They didn't necessarily need something, but Disney thinks in their mind they needed something. And so they rushed this Disney Plus to, switcheroo Moana 2. So that's how Moana 2 has come to be. And I think that backstory is really important and necessary to understand why is Moana 2 so much different on a variety of aspects from Moana 1. So I'm going to leave it there. Rachel, what are your first thoughts you have to say about Moana 2?
It's interesting that you say that it's so different, because I feel like it is different, but then it's also the same. Mm-hmm. And there's even moments where they literally quote the original film. Mm-hmm. Said, we'll see how far I'll go. You're just like, oh my gosh, did they just do that? And I was actually trying to be optimistic about this. I mean, I try to be optimistic going into any film, but my hope was this, the fact that it wasn't coming from Burbank, that it was a different studio, a different hive, that maybe it might be a surprise, and it might be better than people expected. And I there are some, even though I didn't like the film, are things that I think show some promise for that studio.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be curious when you actually get to see them actually making a film from the beginning, and because I think the animation and some other things is pretty good, but it just felt so bland, and convoluted at the same time. We'll dive into it, but especially the sort of the way that it approached the Polynesian lore, I thought was really strange, and just some other things about it. I mean, it's watchable, but it should have been better.
It should have been better.
It's not saying that you can't do a quick turnaround for a film and have it be good. Famously, Toy Story 2, I think, was done in about 9 months. It was going to be a direct to video sort of thing, and then they switched it up, and they totally scrapped the storyline that they had and created a new one very quickly. And Toy Story 2 is incredible. Yeah. So it can be done, but it's very clear to me that I wish I could have been a fly on the wall for this whole process. I wish Disney would be not wise enough to put out a making of like they did for Frozen, the making of Frozen 2, where you realize like they had no idea what they were doing all along. I really want one of those for this, but I just wish I had a better understanding of what was actually completed when they announced this. Like, to me, it seems like the first episode was very much completed and animated, because we spend 36 minutes before Moana actually goes on her journey. I feel like that was all done, and they said, let's just keep it because we have it, right? But I feel like it would have been much better served if they would have, okay, it's fine. Let's cut some of these things, and it's going to be tight. For example, the main villain, she's not even a villain. She's just, I don't know what she is. She's like a Megara character at the end.
Yeah.
They should have made her more of the overarching villainess. Instead of like the villain of the week, like we have in Smallville, where you see them and they're gone. That's what she was. Like, we don't see her at the end, true. And they shoehorn her at the end with the Marvel mid-credits scene. Like, aha, there's going to be a third. I'm like, whoa, why are we doing that? No.
Well, okay. I went to the movies with my brother's family, and it was right after Turkey. And so most of the adults ended up falling asleep through this. I didn't, because I was like, I need to know what's going on. And the youngest of the nieces and nephews, so like the 8 and under crowd, they seemed to really enjoy it. They thought it was fun. My 7th grade niece, she was over it by the end, but my 9th grade niece was like, no, it was great. I liked it. So I feel like it did good enough, but I feel like it's kind of like how you would do like a Looney Tunes movie back in the day. It was just kind of just an extended episode of the cartoon, and where you're really not getting a lot of the depth. You're not getting any character arcs or any real like care in the story, but it's good enough for it's good enough for who it's for, kind of what they feel like, which I don't agree with. I feel like that's insulting. However, we're gonna move forward. And the ideas that the whole thing, to me, if I were to see this on a Disney Plus, I would have also agreed it is great for the platform that it is on. And I would have been like, great, okay, cool. And you would have had the time to expand on all of these characters, create kind of like a misdirect with the, I just call her Batgirl.
Matangi.
Yes. And so I feel like they really could have made, and they were going to make more of this. But then when you come out and say, hey, guess what? Whatever your plans were, we're just going to make this a 3-part series. So you're going to do number 2. So go for it and make something. And you really, it shows, like it's when you know that was the history of it, it's very evident in the story beats and how they didn't really take a lot of moments to breathe. And yeah, so that's my high level.
Yeah, my sister-in-law. So it's so funny. I've been ragging on this movie because I'm just really disappointed. I have very high standards for Disney, and I don't feel like
They've set the bar high.
Yeah, I mean, same thing with Wicked. Like, I feel like I have very high standards because of the musical, and instead of just sitting back and enjoying it, I really expect those standards to be met, and I refuse to give an inch. So I'm always the one that's a little bit more hypercritical because I know what they can be. So, here I am ragging on Moana 2, Moana 2, terrible, but then also me, I'd like 18 tickets to Moana 2, please. I ended up taking the whole family, and my sister-in-law, who had seen my little rant, she pre-release, she said, I could not be a film critic because I really enjoyed it and I have nothing wrong to say about it. I'm like, that's okay. You know what I mean? It's
yeah. There are a lot of people that just thought this is kind of that low expectation. Oh, it was good. Popcorn.
Yeah.
They enjoyed it, but are they going to remember it?
Oh, no.
Is it going to have any kind of legacy? Are they going to be singing the songs years later? No, they're not. Like, and that is the legacy of the great Disney animated films. And like I said, it's watchable, but is that really what we're going for with the Disney animated classic?
Right.
Watchable.
I remember back in the day when we would have all of the VHSs in a row based on canon, and you'd be like, I need to fill in the gaps because all of them are amazing. And now I'm just like, do I really want to count this?
The other thing is that we are, in my opinion, living in one of the gray eras for animation in my lifetime. I mean, this is such an exciting time for animated films where the artists in the industry are really challenging each other to push the boundaries. When you have a movie like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish that should have just been that should have been a Moana 2. It should have been a bland, generic sequel, to a franchise people like well enough. But they push themselves artistically, story-wise, in every department. And or something like the Spider-Verse films where they should have just been bland superhero projects, but they push themselves artistically and story-wise and in so many other ways that if this movie had come out in like 2006, when you got like Happy Feet winning best animated film,
oh my gosh,
in that era, then it'd be like, this was fine. And I'll make the same point when we talk about Spellbound, that like we're just in a time when this is not good enough. We're like when you have Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio and you have these animated films that are really challenging the industry and the medium, it's just not good enough. I mean, the irony is you said that this felt like a Looney Tunes movie. There actually is a Looney Tunes movie coming out this year.
Yes.
That it won't be in theaters until February. That's absolutely great. And so even Looney Tunes is pushing the boundaries of animation, and that's exciting. That's awesome. And Disney has to step up to the plate eventually.
Yeah.
Because it's just not good enough.
Yeah. You say it's not good enough, yet this is going to do, amazing in theaters. It's supposedly going to do 175 over the 5-day weekend, around there. Even if it did 150, that would be blowing it out of the, park. That's how much budget was, not including marketing and other costs. But it's people are going to go see it. And so if we're setting this expectation that, hey, we can be Return of Jafar going forward, is Disney going to take the right lesson from this? Are they going to say, phew, we really missed a bullet with that one. We had a gap in our schedule we had to fill. We shuffled these things around and great. And now we're going to go forward and not do that again. But phew, I'm glad we missed that. Or are they going to say, oh, okay, that's all it takes to potentially make I'm assuming this will probably maybe make $1 billion. I don't know.
It probably will.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm concerned about Disney because Disney does not seem to be learning the right lessons and making the right decisions right now.
Did either of you watch Jenny Nicholson's The Failure of the Star Wars Hotel video?
The 4-hour amazing YouTube video. We'll include it in the show notes.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. Really great. And one of the points that she makes is that like you can only give people less than satisfying experiences for so long before it eventually backpiles on you. It eventually they're going to feel that. Like whether that comes from the parks, whether it comes from disappointing sequels, whether it comes from, whatever it might be, they can only ride on the coattails of their successes in the 90s, and then this revival that we had in the 2010s. You can only ride on that so long before eventually it's just people are just going to, the next time they're going to be like, do I want to invest in this one? The last one wasn't that good.
Right. I mean, we have Wish.
I don't know when that will finally happen, but
we shall see. So let's talk about the characters on this. So mostly we have, main characters of Moana and Maui, but now we get a new ragtag gang of friends that join along. And these really obviously were meant for the TV series. They're each going to have, it appears, episodes dedicated to them to help grow them, but they're really one note. And they serve like a teeny tiny purpose, and then off they go, shuffle them to the side because we don't have money to animate them. We don't have time. There's too much screen time we're wasting here. So we have Keely, who's the old farmer guy, because when you're on a boat, you need to have a farmer, which is, we just wanted an old cranky guy. Like in Tangled, the series, they have that one guy who all I ever think of him is flying around as Cupid in I've Got a Dream.
I feel like they were trying to do like an Odd Couple type of humor, like the old grumpy man. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, great.
I'm going to talk about what I think that would have been a lot better, what they could have done with this cast of characters, but with time being what it wasn't going to work out. But then we have Moni, who is the best friend and storyteller. He's the super fan, and he knows all the history, and he's very good at creating these canvas, and he has his fan art with him and Maui.
Yeah, I felt like he was very one note, but he was, he also couldn't be the love interest at all, and so he's kind of like cornered in his little spot of just being the storyteller.
Right. I thought he was the more interesting out of the three. I would have liked to see more of him. I would have thought maybe like, do we need all these people, and can we just have one interesting sort of person she's stuck with? What did you think, Rachel?
Yeah, I was actually like, I got a little bit hopeful. Like, would they actually have a love interest? Like, have we moved beyond that? Like that all women have to be alone, evidently. Like, it's so annoying to me.
Yep.
But no, of course not. But I thought that the troop was perfectly serviceable. Like, it was fine, but just, they were fine.
And we have Lotto, the best friend in STEM. And she again, one note, she has a hammer and she knows how to use it.
And the thing is that you say that Maui is one of the lead characters. He actually doesn't even appear for quite a while into the movie.
Yeah. Which is, like you said, it mirrors what we see in the first film. Mm-hmm. And what I thought would have been interesting, and this is where I felt they should have mixed it up. So at the very beginning, we get this scene where Moana is just running in the forest and being all, girl boss, amazing. And then we have this gratuitous scene of her flipping her hair around, and we get the first shot of her looking at the camera being like, yeah, I'm Moana, And
that's so 90s like TV show though.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then so we go that and then I think she goes back to her home island, and then we see, I'm not sure when it cuts, but then we go to Maui and we see his struggle. He's stuck. He's in another bind, and there's another sort of, I don't know if she's a god or a demigod. It was unclear. It's not very unclear in this world which is what. But And that's really cool and interesting, and I really like that. And as I was watching this, I was like, it would have been so much better if we would have started with Maui, because we know him, we like him, we don't need to be introduced to him, and show him having this struggle, and then Moana having to come and save him, and or maybe flipping that, maybe where Maui needs Moana instead of Moana needing Maui, and they both needed each other in the first one, but like, she really needed him in order to fulfill her ultimate goal, right? And this one would have been cool if she's on her island, things are fine, and then Maui, for the first time ever, like appears to humans. We're not sure how this happens, but he does that at the end of this movie. But he like appears to them and says, "Moana, I need your help," and they go off on this adventure. I thought that would have been a little bit more interesting and create a little bit more dynamic, because he's kind of always been like, "I'm above you, I don't need you," and they obviously do at the end of the first movie, but I would have liked that role reversal a little bit more to focus on him. And I know the movie's called Moana 2. That doesn't mean we have to entirely make it about Moana.
I guess my biggest issue with this movie is that the original film, they have this made up island, but it's clearly set in Polynesia. And they lean a lot into those cultures, but it's kind of their like new strategy of like we're going to pay homage to cultures, but we're not actually telling stories from those cultures because they don't want to have like the Pocahontas mistake, that and people, what about this and what about this? You did this wrong. You told this wrong. Well, it's a fake country, so we couldn't do it wrong, right?
Yes.
And it's like what they do with Arendelle. It's what they do with this, and I'm fine with that. But I just thought it was so weird that this island is now all of a sudden Themyscira. Like it's like the Wonder Woman place because they have no contact with any other human beings. If this is supposedly in Polynesia, there's like 1,000 islands in Polynesia. Like it just seemed like a very bizarre that I think there's like a curse on the island, and I don't remember that. Maybe it was in the first one, and I just don't remember.
No, they just created that for this one.
There's no
that all of a sudden that they have to go on this journey in order to find. They were acting like they were on an alien planet. I'm like, would we become Star Trek or something? Because like it's just so odd to me, and I thought that was a strange choice because even though it was a fake country, I thought that the first one was such a nice portrayal and it was like inclusion done right and done well, like as far as just a lovely celebration of that culture.
Yes.
And so for all of a sudden it to be this weird, like they're in the underworld for a long time and they're in, I don't know. I just found it so like muddled, and the whole thing with them, like I said, they treated it like it was Themyscira, and I just thought that was so strange.
Yeah. So yes, there is a curse put on it by Lotto. No, not Lotto. Nalo. And who is the mega baddie in this storyline, and basically the Thanos of this world. And he doesn't want the humans to intermingle, so that's kind of weird. And therefore he gets rid of the main island that connects them all through everything, and then makes it very difficult to get together. I don't know. It was very contrived.
Yeah,
and
he's like a LeBron James Polynesian guy. He was like,
yes.
Did we get Space Jam 2 characters in here? Because he looked exactly like LeBron James as an animated character. And I'm like, this is strange. This is odd.
It's like Themyscira. It's like that's how they treated it.
Yeah. It's very obvious that this was meant to be like the cliffhanger for season 2. That, hey, they finally reached the people. And nope, we're not over yet. Now he's mad that they reunited. And then we have Megara, that she's not gonna be free from her bond.
there's so many like connections to other movies that it's like, once again, it's like, show me that you are creatively bankrupt. Tell me you're creatively bankrupt without telling me. And this is this movie. It's just all of these other things that they're going off of, which once again, if it were on Disney Plus, I'd be like, okay, cool. Whatever. We're breaking the fourth wall kind of thing. It's just kind of like, we know that this is silly.
Yeah. So talking about Matangi, aka Batgirl, I don't know how to feel about her because she's so over the top to the point of it being obnoxious.
Yeah, and her facial expressions are like, oh my gosh.
I like it, but then I don't at the same time because she's so different than everyone else. So I'm unsure how I feel about her. Part of me likes it, and then part of me says, whoa, you need to hold back a little bit. And she was the villain of the week. And she wasn't really a villain, though. She was for a little bit, and then she ends up showing her the way to open the portal and saying, like, bye. And turns out, oh, like, you're a good guy. Cool. So see you later. And then I feel like it would have been better served if they would have drawn her out to make her not just the villain in this one area, but she should have been the villain the whole time. Now, again, we don't know production timeline and why they wouldn't have done that, but it feels like if she would have been, this I would have liked a little bit more subtlety with her. You know, so she has that one song where she basically convinces Moana to take the jump and to be a risk taker. And Moana does. But I would have liked a little bit more seduction from her over the course of the, first half to 2/3 of the film, where she's tempting Moana to kind of like go to this dark side. And there was no negative with what happened with Moana. It wasn't like, oh, this was a bad thing. She actually, she took the jump, but there's negative consequences because of what she did. I would have liked to have seen that a little more, where she is tempted, and because Moana had no arc. Moana was a nothing burger.
Yeah.
She has no fatal flaw. She has even her motivation, like, oh, there's other people out there. Oh, I don't want to leave. I'm like, what are you talking about, Moana? You go on adventures all the time. That's how that's how we opened up the movie. You go on this big adventure solo, looking for stuff. And now you suddenly don't want to leave because you have a little sister. You're going to miss her big milestone moments like you're her mom.
Yeah, and that's what's weird is when you look at the fair, like I went in, I hadn't seen the first one in a really long time. So I watched the second one, and then I went back in and I watched the first one again. And I'm like, okay, so the first one, she's an only child. And now this little sister just showed up because apparently now fertility is okay now that they got to Kai.
They're old enough
whatever.
to almost retire from being the chief. Yet, hey, you got to get another kid in there. Like, I think you're probably able to keep being chief.
Right. There was Moana is a Mary Sue. And a Mary Sue is basically a term. I looked at, okay, what does the Google say about this? What is a Mary Sue? A term used to describe a fictional character, usually female, who is portrayed as excessively perfect, lacking any significant flaws, and often seen as a wish fulfillment fantasy for the author or the reader, making them appear unrealistic and unrelatable. Essentially a character with no weaknesses, exceptional abilities in every area, often considered a sign of poor character development, which it is, because if you look at even in the first one, her major flaw is that she doesn't know how amazing she is. And in the first one, Maui does grow, and he overcomes this idea that he wasn't anything without his hook, because he was abandoned by his family, his parents, and then the gods picked him up, gave him a hook, and now he's someone. And he had to overcome this feeling of, I am nothing. I am nothing without this hook. But now he's like, no, I am Maui with or without the hook. That was like the key line at the end of the first movie. And in this one, it's like, there is no development for either character, Maui or Moana. And to be honest, like no character in this movie got any kind of development. Like going back to Moni, who is the best friend and storyteller, like there was a moment where he gets thrown off overboard and he almost dies. And now Moana's like, oh no, it could have been my fault. He could have died and it would have been my fault. Okay, yes, that's a valid feeling that you would have, but at the same time, like this guy is just going over in the side of the beach and just like sitting and pouting, and it's like he's not allowed to have a character arc, because of course that would mean that he would grow a spine and be kind of a manly man and probably attractive to a Moana character and maybe a love interest, and we can't have that. So it's like you have really just like shoved these characters in this like, nope, everybody stays the same, but yes, on the adventure of the week kind of mentality. So nobody's actually growing, nobody's actually making any major changes. It's just plot demands this. Plot go, now we do this. And even in the plot, it's just nothing breathes. And it's like there's no development, there's no feelings in it. And that was, like I said, going back to the beginning, that was my major issue.
So I was talking about what they could have done that I would have enjoyed better instead of this ragtag gang. I would have liked, so remember in the initial Moana script, when we got sent something by someone in the industry that was basically the casting call for Moana, and this was super early. This was like 2013-ish. And initially she had a ton of brothers, like 6 or 7 brothers, and they were all voyagers and wayfarers, and she always wanted to be. And I thought it would have been a lot more interesting. Like, clearly they couldn't do this now because Moana doesn't have brothers. But if those brothers existed, it would have been really cool for her to go on an adventure with her family. But since they don't exist, I thought it would have been really interesting if she went on an adventure with her dad. Because her dad, it's like, oh, all bow down to Moana. Moana's great. We love you, whatever. But maybe have the dad and her go on this adventure together because, other people can help except for Moana, because especially at the end of the second movie or the first movie, we see that like other people are learning how to do boats. And I would have liked like the chief and maybe some select warriors, like, hey, we're going to do this, and kind of push Moana aside. Like, you're not needed anymore. But then she ends up coming. And then there's a lot of conflict between Moana and her dad, where he's being the patriarch of the family and exerting like as a leader. But this is my role. Like, this is my thing, Dad. And I would have thought it was so interesting to have them clash that way. And then, their relationship, it struggles, and then they overcome it, and they end up stronger in the end. I thought that would have been so great, because I actually care about that relationship versus these are random folks on the island who I recruited for my adventure.
Yeah. No,
you were going to ask me for a Moana 2. What I would have done is the whole point of the first one was her building up to being basically the chief. She's not the princess. She's going to lead her people. So why not have the second one be her actually leading her people? Right. Like, instead of this weird idea of them being isolated, and why not have a warring nation coming, to come after them, and she has to both be a diplomat but also lead her people against this enemy, and you could have it. To me, that would be a lot more interesting. I mean, yeah, maybe it's too dark to have actual war in a Disney film, but like,
why not?
Something you could have something kind of like that.
Morgan wants blood.
I mean, children and families can handle these tough topics, and Disney can do it quite well. At least they have. This one ultimately,
but I think that would have been, because she really doesn't get to lead except for her, 4 or 5 people on the boat in the movie.
Yeah, we get this, in that extended opening scene of her hanging out on the island. Like, we get hints of her, like, basically being anointed to be the chief in a way, where they're having to, like, drink the dusty water. I don't know what that was.
The milky something.
Yeah.
I think it was probably coconut milk.
You could even, like, Swiss Family Robinson it would have, like, booby traps, make it kind of a little bit silly, as far as taking down the enemy. You could make it pirates if you wanted. Pirates are coming and they're gonna but whatever. Who
instead
cares? Something like that.
Instead, we get the Kakamora again,
and they're not bad.
They're better in this one. At least they have a little, connection. No, but there's a thread. But I'm like, we did this plot point. They're off on the adventure, but oh no, it gets disrupted because the coconut bandits are coming along and destroying everything, and we got to stop. And like, I understand why, because at the very end of this in the TV series, they get their ragtag gang, and each one, obviously the little Kukamora is the little bird that's Minnie's friend in Minnie's Bow Tunes, by the way. But no, Kukaloka, I think that's her name. Anyway, it's basically Disney's version of Tweety. The Kakamora, there's a little guy who's at the end, and he does something to help along. And so but at the same time, it's like, yes, you animated all of this, but couldn't you just like delete that character out of the frame?
It felt very Remember Barry to me. Yeah. Oh, remember this from the previous film?
Yeah.
Remember this?
There are too many callbacks. Let's just go in and talk about the music real quick. There's way too much of it. As a music person, I was like, why are we doing this? This is really just filler and not as good, and definitely not as good. I mean, there's a couple songs that are like they're passable, but none of them are anywhere near what the original was. And
nothing helped Lin-Manuel Miranda more than Moana 2 this year.
True.
That's for sure.
There's a Morgan. Where did you get that tweet that it was like Lin-Manuel Miranda's like, well. I guess it's not as easy as you thought to write a Disney script. Disney song.
Yeah, true.
No, so what's interesting is this with the short timeline, and because it was initially the voice cast wasn't even there. They had probably a different voice actress for Moana and actor for Maui, because after this was announced, it wasn't announced that they were back. It was only a few weeks later that they're like, yes, they're coming back to do the voices. So they had to re-record the voices. Obviously, the script had changed a bit. But then I don't know if there were songs in this original version, what was carried over, but they couldn't get him back. He notoriously is like takes a long time to do stuff, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And you just couldn't get him back to 6 months. Like, who would sign on for this? This is like career suicide. Like, no,
yeah,
I'm not going, because he went over to Polynesia or Hawaii and like worked with people who were very accomplished musicians and like really created this cool not new, but this Polynesian soundtrack for this. But then they got Barlow and Bear. And Barlow and Bear are these two songwriters who were most known for doing the Bridgerton musical, which was a TikTok hit. And
yeah, it's pretty interesting. Like, so they wrote this Bridgerton musical, and it was always claimed as the unofficial, that it was an old piece of fan fiction or whatever. And now Netflix actually let them get away with it for a long time. They didn't sue them or anything like that until they finally went too far when they put on a production, I think at the Kennedy Center or someplace like that. They put on a production, and that's when finally,
okay, now we need money.
Netflix, you know what? This is not just a fan, because it was like they were trying to claim that it was equivalent of like a fan film, and they're, you know, now you're actually profiting off of our copyright. And so a lot of people were like, oh, greedy Netflix. And I'm like, no, actually they were like in the right in that situation, like to do what they did. But it even won the Grammy for best theatrical album, which is crazy for, at least to me, it seems crazy for, you would think that you would need some kind of actual production, but no, they never had. When it had won the Grammy, it had never actually been produced, but it's won for theatrical album, so that's bonkers. But it is pretty catchy. It's pretty good songs, and I don't think these songs are really bad. I like if I was looking for somebody to do an animated film in the future, like I'd be interested in them. I thought they did an okay job. It just it wasn't that memorable.
They were clearly taking the outline and the story, you know, of the original, and just trying to copy that. We have the Tulu Tagaloa song. That's the exact same song that's in Moana 1. They didn't write that. That's just brought back in. We have We're Back, which is Moana 2's Where You Are. We have Beyond, which is Moana 2's version of How Far I'll Go. She even walks up the same darn mountain and does the same things.
When she literally says, we'll see how far I'll go.
And she ends it. Like, is it in this one, or is it in We're Back, where she says, I am Moana?
Yeah.
So they're calling back to that. Then we have My Wish for You, Finding the Way. What could be better than this? This is there wasn't really an equivalent, but this is the come on gang song. Let's get you on board, you know, because no one really wanted to do any work. And so she's very quickly within one song motivates her. Get Lost. This is, I guess, Shiny, but not really. Yeah. It's just a very over-the-top villain song. And Can I Get a Chee-Hoo? Which, Chee-Hoo, the Chee-Hoo thing just was mind-boggling. They're trying to make a catchphrase. They're trying to make fetch happen. It was weird. It's Moana 2's version of You're Welcome. And it kind of felt like a lame version of One Last Hope from Hercules, you know, because she's trying to overcome this. It's not even a real thing. It's just like they're in this fake A Friend Like Me world, where it's like they're like on a stage almost, and very minimal background. And she's trying to overcome like these fake waves to get to the very end. And she can't do it at the beginning. At the very end, she can. So it reminds me of Hercules overcoming, like learning to be a hero because he sucks. He's very, you know, uncoordinated. And through the training with Phil, he's able to really train and become an amazing hero. Right. It felt like a version of that. And then there's like a few other reprise but it's like they were hitting the same thing. Oh, Maui needs to have a song. We got to have a villain song. We got to have another I Want song, but let's just copy what we did in the first one, copy and paste.
Well, if you were doing this as a series, you would need this many songs. But in this movie, you didn't. Especially, the Come On Gang song was just like, okay, why we're singing again? What are we doing? There's just so many of them that it wasn't even in, you know, when you put in a song, it is because the emotion is so much that just talking wouldn't be enough. And there are a couple moments where there's one song that she sings that she's on the island and she just, this is like in the middle of the movie, and she's just starts off into this other song. And it's just like, I don't feel like the emotion needs this. Like you could just say this. This could be an email. Like yeah. Okay.
Nice. So let's talk about the animation. What did you guys feel about the animation? Did this feel like TV quality to you? Or did it meet expectations of the first?
I think so. I thought it looked beautiful. I think it looked a step up from your typical like Flash animated series that you see. I think that I thought it was good, and I'm excited to see what it shows promise to me what this Toronto Disney Canada could do as far as animation.
As far as I felt like the quality when it first started, I was actually looking at this like, okay, how good is this? And it's like you have the water scenes, you have all these things, and when I'm in the theater, I was like, oh yeah, no, everything looks good. There were a couple moments where I felt like the audio was off of their talking, like that didn't match up the lips. And then there were moments. But like all in all, different shots, there were some that impressed me. But then when I went back and I rewatched the first one, I was like, nah, the first one, it just feels more intentional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, with a TV series, you're going to have lower quality standard. That's always been the way, right? You got the lower budgets, you have the crazy turnaround for each episode. That's totally expected. The great thing about modernity is the technology has improved so much that you can really kind of use the same engines, at least for a CGI, and have them look pretty good. And I feel like it was at a certain point and they had to up-level some of the shots, but they couldn't up-level all of them. It reminds me of Aladdin, where they totally shifted the design of Aladdin midway through, but there were already shots that were in production, and they didn't have time or money to go back and reanimate. So speaking of A Friend Like Me, if you look at Aladdin in A Friend Like Me, most of the faraway shots are the old version of Aladdin, where he's a little bit younger looking. And I kind of got this feel, there's certain scenes that were like the key main scenes where it's big moments. I felt like they either created those from scratch or redid them. But then there were others that was really struggling with. For example, I mean, the animation just kind of felt a little cheaper, but background characters on her home island were very flat and they had this plasticky look to them. There was no definition. Even her main companion guy, there were certain scenes where I'm like, you look like a Barbie doll, because there's just nothing. It's just, I kind of can't really explain it. So something felt off about the characters, especially a lot of background characters. And another thing I really noticed, water felt off. It didn't feel as vibrant and like natural movement. It just kind of felt a little stagnant. But water hair simulation was not on point. There's a dream sequence where she's underwater. And you think Ariel, where Ariel's hair is kind of floating all around her. Because if you ever, been in a pool and done the mermaid thing, right? You go under the water and your hair just floats and has this life to it. And hers didn't. It felt very heavy. The majority of the weight of her hair, there was a few little pieces that were floating upward, but mostly it was down, with like the main mass being below. And I thought, okay, maybe that's just what they're doing. But then it faded to her on land and the hair had the exact same weight. There was no transition. It just like, we took her from this scene to that scene. And I was like, oh, yeah. Same thing with the main villain girl when she was floating and doing certain things. I think maybe she was underwater, but like her hair kind of felt like it was one big mass that you could like move as a chunk for the most part, but it didn't have these individual strands that had a lot of life and independence, if you will. And I think that's just budget. I think that was just a restraint that they had. Those are very nitpicky things to notice, but I did notice.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see what they do when they are like completely free for their own projects. I'm very curious.
So do you think we're going to see Moana 3? So we have the end where it's the mid-credits scene and I'm not done with you. I still got to get that darn pesky Moana and her friends. And I saw someone as I was leaving the theater, someone was like, yeah, there's going to be a third one. And he's like, what? There is? And it's, they're like, yeah, didn't you watch the scene at the end? There's going to be a third one. And I'm like, okay, they're teasing a third one, like Marvel. Like, but did they need to do that? Because you could totally.
This thing's going to make $1 billion. So yeah,
I guess they're just leaving the door open in case they want to go down that route. We shouldn't be surprised because here they are making Frozen 3 and 4. So, maybe this is going to be a low point in the Moana series, and Moana 3 will have a little bit more time.
Toy Story 5.
Yeah. more love and attention and time and money to really build out a fantastic third film. So, yeah. Okay. There's one other thing I want to talk about is Moana, what happened to Moana with the tattoos? Did she become a demigod?
Yes. According to Wikipedia, yes, she becomes a demigod.
That was not explained at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was a little confused about it. Like, is she immortal now?
I feel like if that's the case, it should have been a bigger deal. There was no talk about it when she got home. It was like, oh, cool, tattoos. Which tattoos in Polynesian culture are a huge thing. But what's interesting is the majority of people in her world don't have them. Like, her dad doesn't have them, the mom doesn't have them. Like, majority of people don't, which is interesting. We see the one scene in the first movie where someone is getting a tattoo, but Moana doesn't. Maui obviously does. It's his thing. And so they give Moana tattoos, which I think is a bold choice, but they had to do the whole sleeve, which I was like, could we just do the Pocahontas route or just give her like a little tribal tattoo, just a teeny bit? But she turned into this demigod. And what was confusing to me is her tattoos like had this golden aura to them, whereas Maui's, at least in this version, they kind of had this bluish ocean glow. And so I think the fact that they were two different colors made me confused about what was happening. Was the goal just her receiving the tattoo for the first time? Oh no, because later when she's guiding a ship, they start glowing again at the very end. I think they should have matched that. They should have both been blue to tie visually what was happening with this if she was becoming a demigod like unto Maui. Can we just keep that consistent?
Yeah, I get that. So she dies because she gets, struck by the lightning. And then Maui comes down. He is also not a demigod at this point because he has lost his powers from this, interaction, but somehow makes it down to, and the ocean decides to give them a bubble of air so that they can like have this little moment, which really reminded me of the movie Aquaman when they didn't want to do underwater scenes. And so they just created a bubble of air around them. It's so much easier not to do the water thing. And so but he hold her, and then all of her ancestors come. And that was also an interesting thing. I was like, the ancestors are really on call all the time. And there's a lot of ability to just interact with them. So I found that to be interesting. But yeah, so I guess she dies, but then all of them imbue her with some kind of magical gift. So now she is also a demigod and while Maui has his hook, she now has her oar, and they are somehow connected together.
My magic oar.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, it's just what are you going to do with that? So now what other powers does she have other than she's just a human or demigod compass? I don't know.
Yeah, her coming back to life reminded me of from A Court of Thorns and Roses. Feyre is a human who ends up, sorry, spoilers, everybody, that she ends up turning into High Fae, which is kind of like fairy. She dies, and then all the chiefs or the kings or the royalty of the fairies, they say, okay, we'll turn you into one of us. And so I guess one of us. That's what we get here. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Any other things that you're chomping at the bit to talk about, or things you didn't make sense?
I don't know. For me, this was the movie that the more I thought about it, the more annoyed I felt about it. Like when I first got out of it, I was like, oh, it's fine. It was okay. But then I was like, what about that? And why did they do that? And why? I don't know. It was just kind of I bet if we'd done this episode immediately the day after I saw it, I would have been more positive. But I don't know, just kind of the more I sat with it, the more I was like, oh.
Yeah. There were a few funny moments. This wasn't necessarily a funny film, but in my theater, we didn't get a ton of laughs. But when the chicken made crazy noise, all the kids were just busting up laughing. The still not a princess. Well, a lot of people think you are. That got a lot of laughs from the adults in my theater. And then there was one, he says, I'm an elder and I'm 3,000 years old, which makes me elder. And I'm immediately, the first thing I went to thought, I was like, the better line would have been, I'm the elder. But the elder just sounded lame. But this wasn't a hilarious film. There were a lot of moments that I think were supposed to be funny, and I was like, heh. But one thing I liked was the fire dancing that Maui was doing. I thought that really tied into Polynesian culture, and I was like, ooh, Marissa, I like this superpower. Do more of this.
Marissa loved that part. And she was like, I liked when he had the was like the fire blowing saxophone. It's like
that was so random.
I was like, that is something to remember, Marissa.
I mean, if I were to tell people, people were asking like, oh, should I see Wicked or Moana 2? And it's really age dependent. Personally, I'd say don't go see this in theaters. I don't want it to do well, and I don't want Disney to get any ideas that they can just make things on the cheap and call it good. But of course, it's going to do well. Disney's not going to learn any lessons. And I honestly, if people were to say, what should I see? I would tell people to say Wicked. I mean, Wicked is PG. There really isn't anything that's offensive or difficult for children.
I agree.
Other than the length.
I would say if The Wild Robot is still playing near you, see that instead.
It was. Okay, so in my theater, they had 3 different showings, which is crazy to me considering it's been out since September. And there's so many options right now at different theaters. I mean, I went to a theater with 25 screens, so they had a little bit more room. But man, if my kids hadn't already seen The Wild Robot, I would have told the whole family, like, hey guys, we're gonna go see The Wild Robot. It's amazing. Because the difference between The Wild Robot, we were talking about, how you said, Rachel, after this movie, I liked it, but then I started thinking about it and then I didn't like it. And I think the good movies versus the bad movies. The bad movies, you think about it and then you start thinking about what you saw and kind of getting mad about it or questioning things or why did they do that? And good movies leave you just thinking more about the themes and the concepts in the film. And that's what The Wild Robot does. That's what The Last Wish did, where you leave and you're just really inspired about the message that it portrays. So yeah, that's a good idea. Go see The Wild Robot if you haven't seen it yet. If you have older children, go see Wicked if they can handle the runtime. But if you got little ones, I mean, Moana 2 is your best bet and they're going to love it.
Yeah.
So what would we rate it?
So I feel like this really could have been a cool series. They could have built up the story, let it breathe, give characters arcs, but they didn't. Still, they did the best with what they had, I feel like. And enough people are going to think, yeah, that was fine. That was great. It wasn't terrible. I'd still give it 2.5 stars because that's just like right down the middle. There's too many things for me that I would gripe about for me to give it any more, but it felt fine enough. I know that I gave the first one, I think 4 stars. I had to go back and listen to our episode, which was episode 136. And shout out, we had Pablo Ruiz and Ryan Pareto join me on that one. So that was fun. Good memories. Morgan had just had baby Graham. So this has been out for 8 years. It's been out a long time. The first one. So it's been 8 years later. They're finally putting out another one. It's interesting. But yeah, so 2.5 stars.
Rachel, do you want to go next or do you want to?
Yeah, I agree. I would give it 2.5 stars. It's watchable, but convoluted and frustrating at the same time.
Okay. I'm going to give it 2 stars. I just really had a difficult time with this. I felt I have high expectations for Disney, and this one, the TV series origins really were indelible in my mind, and I couldn't distract myself away from those. I think the first one has set such a high bar that if you're going to do another one, I expect it to be at least of that level. And everything felt pale comparison. And the songs felt like they were just trying to copy. There was even a part with the Chi Hu song that he was doing a rap. And I will give them props. That was the one part of the film where I was like, oh, you definitely got the rapping Lin-Manuel Miranda vibe down. That was the one part where I thought, okay, this is fine. But it was just like kind of copying what had been done in the first. Animation, I thought, wasn't as good and was distracting at times. Overall, it was just like plot. We're ultimately trying to get to this end point. And then there were her motivations as why she was doing things were very shallow. And overall, this film was just a shallow attempt at a Moana film. So I'm going to give 2 stars. Now, we did have one person who was talking to us on X, or formerly known as Twitter, said, hey guys, this is Lauren. So, hey guys, I'd love to hear your Moana. Say this again. Lauren says, hey guys, I'd love to hear a Moana review first, if possible. I gave people the option. I said, hey, do you want Spellbound or Moana? People said Moana. No pressure. Can you please break down the scene where Samia sends Moana a message and she sends one back? I'm asking for the visuals. So Lauren is blind. And so when she goes to see the film, she has the the audio description of what's happening. And so I didn't even notice that scene, to be honest.
So what she does is she I believe it is Moana, because the ocean is her friend, and so the ocean kind of does its thing. I think Moana goes down to the water and draws a heart in the water, and it cuts back to Samia, and she sees the heart, and then I think she draws one again as well, but then also like splashes it, and then the splash comes back at Moana.
I see.
So
there you have it.
I believe that's what happened.
Well, let us.
I had a hard time remembering things about this movie a couple days later.
Well, let us know your thoughts about Moana 2. Go to rotoscopers.com/322. Leave us your mini reviews in the comments there. It's really fun to see you guys there and interact with you. We love hearing your thoughts. Obviously, you can send us voicemails, rotoscopers.com/voicemails, or call us at 406-646-6575. And until our next episode is going to be Spellbound, and we will also continue to have the presence of the amazing Rachel with us. So that is going to be a fun one. So 2 different Thanksgiving films this year, and they are vastly different. So it'll be fun to talk about that one next. So until next time, we are the Rotoscopers.
You've been listening to the Animation Addicts Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you want to help spread the word, be sure to share the podcast with your friends on social media. Just don't forget to tag us at Rotoscopers on Instagram and use the hashtag Animation Addicts. For all the links and full show notes for this episode, go to rotoscopers.com/podcast. Now, if you still can't get enough for your animation fix, be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and visit rotoscopers.com for more animation news, reviews, and interviews. Thanks for listening.